What's going on, guys? It's the Honda Baron, and in today's video I want to talk about smaller bikes and specifically whether or not you should start on a 250cc or 300cc motorcycle as your first bike. I started out on a 300cc and I'd still be riding it if I didn't get into my accident, but I want to talk about whether or not they are good bikes for beginners, and if they're good enough for you to start on, what are the benefits of starting on a bike like that, and why I recommend it. That's the plan for today's video. Let's roll. And that guy's awkwardly looking at me, talking to myself like a Muppet. But that's okay, isn't it? So I know that smaller bikes get a lot of hate. I know when I had one, people kept asking me, is that bike big enough? When are you going to get a real bike? You know, yada, 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 yada. Let me tell you guys, there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting with a smaller displacement motorcycle, and personally I recommend it for just about every rider. For me personally, I am not responsible enough to own a leader bike. I am not responsible enough, I don't even think I'm responsible enough to own a CBR 600 RR, one of my dream bikes. I am just not a responsible guy to begin with, and give me a bike like that with all that power, I'm either going to die or get my license revoked, because I just don't have the responsibility to not drive around like a Muppet. If you do, I respect that. I don't, and that's that when it comes to bigger displacement motorcycles for me. But as per the topic of this video, smaller bikes. As a beginner, should you start out on a smaller bike? Yes, I 100% think you should, and here are the reasons why. So number one, I'm going to give a bit of a rev in this bridge. Hope you guys do this too. Did you love that? So number one reason why you should start out on a smaller bike is that it's easier to learn how to ride a smaller bike. They're more forgiving. You'll be more comfortable starting out on a bike that isn't a monster between your legs. You're not going to be able to make as dangerous or critical mistakes on a 250 or 300 as you would on a 600 or 750. For example, let's say you're coming out of a turn and you goose it, right? You give it a whole bunch of throttle, you don't know what's going on, you're still new, you want to feel cool coming out of that turn like a street Rossi. So you goose the throttle. What happens on a smaller displacement motorcycle? Absolutely nothing. But on the bigger motorcycles, you're going to give too much power to the back wheel, it's going to spin, and you're going to goose the bike, you're going to dump it in the woods, you know, you're going to have to... Oh, I thought the bicycle's light was the cops back there. You're going to goose the bike around a turn, and you're not going to have a good day after that, especially if you just spent all this money on a bigger displacement motorcycle. That's not a good way to start your day, or it's not something you really want to happen as a new rider. It's embarrassing, it's going to damage your ego. You might get a bit nervous on the bike after that. The smaller displacement bike, you give her out of a turn, as long as the road is dry and the tires are new enough, nothing's going to happen. You're just going to have a blast, you know, as you watch those revs climb. And just hearing that sound that of every turn, starting from a stop, it's you learn to love it. So like I'm saying, these smaller bikes are more forgiving. You'll learn the mechanics of riding a motorcycle. You'll learn how these bikes handle in the twisties. You'll learn how to get your lean on. You'll learn what happens when you make certain moves, like, you know, when you take certain actions on the motorcycle, and it's a smaller motorcycle. This all translates into your skills that you will need when you do upgrade in the future, but you'll learn these skills on a smaller bike with a smaller margin for error and less likely of a chance for something to go wrong. Now, yes, you can screw around on a smaller bike. Yes, people goose it. Yes, things happen. But for the most part, you have more control over the smaller motorcycle. You can feel what's going on more as a new rider with a smaller motorcycle. And I get it, these bigger bikes are powerful, they're a blast to ride, but depending on where you live, you might not even be able to take full advantage of a bigger bike. And now let's say you have a 650 or a 600, a 750, or a leader bike as your first bike. You're going to be cruising around in what, first, second, maybe third gear, maybe fourth gear if you're on the highway. You won't be changing gears a lot, and they're bigger bikes, they're heavier, they're a bit more cumbersome to control when you're on the road. So you hit twisties like this. Let's say you see a wet patch up ahead or some leaves. You go to twist that bike, it's so heavy, you're gonna come back into that turn, you're gonna try to correct it, but it's gonna wobble and it's gonna throw you from the bike, or you're gonna goose it in the woods. With a smaller bike, that's not gonna happen. And when it does happen, it's to a much lesser extent, and you'll know how to correct yourself when it does happen on a bigger bike. So you're less likely to get into an accident, you're less likely to lose control. These smaller bikes teach you the mechanics of riding, the mechanics you need to be learning and focusing on learning, especially as a new rider. Not going super fast in a straight line, not always worried about something happening if you give the bike too much power. So as I was saying, you're going to learn the mechanics of how the motorcycle works. You're going to learn how to correct your mistakes before they become big mistakes that you don't want to experience on a bigger bike. What's up, buddy? And I'm of the team that you will become a better rider learning how to ride on a smaller bike, and they're a blast to ride as well, but I'll get into that in a minute. And the second thing I want to mention, the second reason why it's good to start on smaller bikes, is they're so cheap to buy. So many people start on smaller bikes that the market is flooded with these 250 and 300cc motorcycles, and you can pick them up for here between $1,500 and $2,500 for a relatively new 250 or 300cc. And the beauty of these bikes is that when you go to sell it next spring or a year or two later, you're going to get a lot of your money back, if not the same or even more money back than what you paid, depending on all your bargaining skills. That's a good thing to have. A lot of the bigger bikes, they'll depreciate, especially newer bikes. You don't want to buy a newer, bigger bike as your first rider. You're going to lose a lot of money on depreciation, right away, right? In that first year, you're going to lose probably 30% of its value just for depreciation. The used market for these smaller bikes is huge. There's so many of them available, and it makes it easy just to start riding affordably without having to spend a lot of money on buying a bike, on all of that nonsense. So they're really affordable to buy, these smaller displacement bikes, and that keeps money in your pocket for upgrades or maintenance, or money that you can save for your second bike when you do decide to upgrade to something bigger or something different. On the same note, when it does come to maintenance, these small bikes are easier, cheaper, easier and cheaper to maintain. They also tend to be more reliable if you get a smaller displacement Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. These bikes are super reliable. They go forever, just like my CB500X. They just want to be ridden, right? And again, as a new rider, you don't want to be spending all your time or money on maintenance or worrying about maintenance. You just want to be able to hop on the bike and ride. And you're going to find that with these smaller displacement motorcycles that are designed to be low maintenance. They're designed to be affordable to run. Because you got to realize, guys, a lot of these bikes are super popular in third world countries. For example, the CBR 250R is the top selling bike in places like Thailand, in places like India. These bikes are so cheap to maintain. They're so reliable. These people aren't worried about maintenance like you or I, right? For the most part, they're riding it until these bikes fall apart, and that's so many more kilometers than you're going to be getting here, or than you're probably going to be getting on your beginner bike. And that's another thing that makes them so good for beginners, is you're not spending that money on maintenance, you're not spending that money on upkeep. That's all the money that you can save to then put into your savings for the next bike you want to buy. So not only are they cheap to buy, they're also cheap to maintain. Insurance is super cheap. So on these smaller displacement motorcycles, insurance is really affordable. All money that you want to be saving and you don't want to be spending, especially as a new rider, because you want to ride a bigger bike. And I guess that ties into the fourth thing I wanted to mention, is the affordable insurance. So when you are a new rider, it's difficult to get insurance, and especially if you're a younger guy or girl, insurance on bigger bikes is so expensive, and a lot of companies won't even insure you depending on the bike. I know it's almost impossible to get insurance on a leader bike here in Ontario, even if you are a more advanced rider. My insurance company, for example, will not insure leader bikes. It's just not something they do. And if you're a young kid and you just bought a 600 or 750, you're going to be paying a lot for insurance, a lot more than you want to be paying for a bike that realistically you're only going to ride half the year, for the most part, depending on what you're willing to put up with weather-wise. And there's just no reason to do that to yourself. It's better to buy a smaller displacement motorcycle, cheaper to run, easier to maintain, and more affordable in every aspect. Whether it's insurance, whether it's maintenance, whether it's resale, buying them, you're going to save money all around on a smaller bike. And again, that's one of the main reasons why I would recommend starting out on a 250 or a 300cc motorcycle. What's up, buddy? And And then the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to these smaller bikes is there's that saying that it's more fun to ride a slow bike fast than it is to ride a fast bike slow. And now if you live in the city, if you live somewhere as congested and as busy as where I live, if you live somewhere where there's not so many twisties or the riding just isn't that great, it definitely is more fun to ride a slow bike fast. And now that's really the only regret I have with the CV500X is, in all honesty, yes, this is a better bike, but my CBR 300R was more fun to ride. Coming through the gears, shifting through the gears all the time, hitting the twisties where it's full throttle every single gear, where you're just going bam, 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 hitting that rev limiter, riding that engine brake downhill all the time. So like I was saying, my old bike was a blast. The smaller displacement bikes are a blast to ride, getting that wide open throttle in every gear and just giving her every time, right? Yes, you can do that with these bigger bikes, but it's not the same. And I got the bigger bike, and now I kind of want to baby it, right? It feels like I want to baby it. I don't want to be ripping open that throttle every gear the way I was with my CBR 300R. With the CBR, it just kind of feels like that's what you want to do with it. You can't baby those bikes, but with a bike like this, I get it's not an expensive bike, but it's a bigger bike, and I feel like babying it more. I did so much on the CBR 300R that I just am not going to do on this bike because it's my little baby, It's my little weekend. Okay, it's not a weekend. Definitely not a weekend warrior. I ride all the time. So like I was saying, these small bikes are a blast to ride. You don't need to baby them ever. You can thrash the heck out of them. You can ride them hard, put them away wet, and it's just going to want to keep getting ridden. As a beginner, that's what you're looking for. You want to be having fun out on the road. You don't want to be worried about an expensive bike. You don't want to be worried about goosing it in the woods and something happening. You just want to be able to have a good time and ride. And that's what you're going to find with these smaller displacement motorcycles. So overall, as a new rider, I would definitely recommend getting a smaller displacement bike. If you're responsible, if you've got the need for speed, and if you just want a bigger bike, guys, there's nothing wrong with that. But in my opinion, if you want to develop your skills more as a new rider, if you want to, become a better rider, and you want to focus more on the skill development, on the mechanics of the bike, and not have to worry about dropping it, not have to worry about anything happening, then I would definitely recommend getting a smaller bike. They're a blast to ride. They're super fun. You're not missing out on anything. And you can always upgrade in the future, right? Anyways, that's what I want to talk about in today's video. I think I covered just about everything. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you like this video. Actually, shout out to Ian Landesman. Don't hit that like video. Don't subscribe to this video. And don't have a great day or a great night, because I don't care where you are. Shout out to Ian. I don't get how I get it's Landesman, but I've got a cousin, it's Landsman. We're Jewish though, so maybe that's the difference. Anyways, you guys, take it easy, we'll see you in the next video.